The Cat Ate My Gymsuit, Chapter 10. My alarm went off in the morning. I got up, dressed, and went downstairs. Both my parents were eating breakfast. The morning paper was lying on the table. Miss Finney's picture was on the front page. The headline read, "Junior High Teacher Dismissed, Refuses to Pledge Allegiance." Miss Barbara Finney, teacher of English at Dwight David Eisenhower Junior High School, has been suspended from her duties until further notice for her refusal to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Frank Stone, principal, stated, "As a good American, I am chagrined to think that this type of individual is allowed to influence impressionable young people." Miss Finney was not available for comment at publication time. A hearing will be held on Tuesday, October 15th at 8 p.m. in the auditorium at J. Edgar Hoover High School. The public is invited to attend. Finishing the article, I put the paper back down on the table. My father started, "I suppose you're impressed by this woman's actions." "I've learned a lot in her class." He slammed down his coffee cup. "I want you to stay out of this, Marcy. You are not going to turn into a revolutionary. Learn to play by the rules." I concentrated on pouring the milk on my cornflakes. My mother put her hand on mine. "I'm sorry. I was very impressed by her when I met her at the PTA meetings." I asked, "Can I go to the hearing?" "Martin, why don't we go together? You and me and Marcy. I know it's important to her." "All right, I suppose so. It'll be interesting to see Miss Know-it-all's teacher get fired. But I'm warning you, young lady, I want you to stay out of trouble." "Can I be excused? I have to meet someone at school to go over homework." "All right, but remember what I said." I ran up to my room, grabbed my books and jacket, and ran out the door before anyone else had a chance to say anything to me. When I got there, Joel was waiting. A bunch of other kids were also standing around. They were from the different classes that Miss Finney taught, also from Smedley. All of them were pretty upset. Joel said, "What we have to do is get all of the kids together and make plans. Each of you go around now and get lists of kids who are willing to help support her." The group broke up and Joel turned to me. "Marcy, we have only 4 school days and a weekend before the hearing. We've got to get organized fast. And listen, Nancy's decided to have a party Saturday night. Would you go with me?" Just like that, I got asked out for the very first time. "Yeah, if you want to take me, I guess I can go. But I have to ask my parents first." The bell rang for homeroom, and we got up and went into the school. I was in a daze. Joel and I went to our separate lockers. I ran into Nancy. "Hey, Marcy, you had to hang up last night before I had a chance to tell you. I'm having a party Saturday. Can you come?" "Yeah. Joel just invited me." "I think." "What do you mean, I think?" "Yeah, he asked me." "Don't be so surprised. I said he liked you. See?" Mr. Stone walked up to us. "Good morning, girls. Marcy, I want to see you in my office after homeroom. Be there promptly." Then he walked on. "Marcy, are you going to get it because of what happened in class yesterday?" "Probably." What's it like to go to the principal's office?" "I don't know. I only get detention a lot." Just what I needed to think about. Maybe we'd have an earthquake during homeroom, and I wouldn't have to go. Or maybe I'd be lucky enough to trip and break my leg, so that an ambulance would carry me away before I got to the office. Probably if that happened, Mr. Stone would yell and tell me to go to the nurse, who would tell me to take a nap and then go back to class. Going into homeroom, I tripped on someone's feet, but I didn't break anything. When it came time to say the pledge, I looked around to see what everyone was doing. Some kids said it. Others passed chewing gum sticks and notes. A couple of kids talked. Not too many seemed aware of the words. What did it all mean? It seemed to say everything that Miss Finney believed in: liberty and justice for all. One nation. Maybe it was the under God part? She never talked about religion, but maybe that was it. I didn't know. The bell rang, and I headed for the office. Lots of kids were there. Some had come to school late, and now they were waiting around until the secretary had time to make out late passes. A couple of kids were there because they had been caught sneaking cigarettes in the bathroom. They should have gone to the faculty room. The smoke there is so thick no one would have seen them. I sat down, chewed on my nails, and waited to see Mr. Stone. About 45 minutes later, I was called into his office. He had a picture of his family on his desk. It was the kind that you get on a Christmas card with a copied letter of how the family was doing and how they've grown. Mr. Stone frowned at me. "Marcy, you were very rude to me yesterday. I don't understand it. You've always been such a good student. I don't want you or any other student to get involved in the situation. It's a matter for grown-ups to handle." I was scared, like when you go to the doctor to get a flu shot, but I couldn't let him bully me. "Mr. Stone, it involves us. Miss Finney was our teacher, and she is a good teacher." He kept frowning. "Don't you understand? I'm very concerned. Miss Finney has a great many philosophies and teaching techniques that are not good." "No, I don't understand." "Marcy, the younger generation just doesn't understand that we've got to play by the rules. Let me tell you about my oldest daughter. She was a good student, just like you, and she was accepted to a fine college. When she got there, she met some people with very radical ideas. Now she's dropped out of school and is living in a commune and spending all of her time making quilts and gardening. Can't you see now why I am so concerned about Miss Finney and her strange ways?" "But Mr. Stone, she's not strange. She does teach us regular English, and I don't think your daughter is doing anything wrong." Mr. Stone exploded. "That's it! I've had it! Now you listen, young lady. You'll be very sorry someday. I spent my whole life trying to keep America's ideals in mind, and this school a good place to educate young people. And then along comes a teacher who talks about feelings and being in touch with yourself, and she doesn't believe in grades and argues at teachers' meetings and doesn't dress like a teacher and won't salute the flag. And I also have to deal with community pressure. Well, I just won't have it." I got really scared. It's horrible to be yelled at. Then his phone rang. He picked it up, listened for a minute, and then looked up and said, "Marcy, I hope that you understand that I only want the best for all of you. You may now return to class." I left the office. I was very confused. I had gotten a late pass to go to gym. As long as Mr. Stone kept me out of class, he should have let me miss that class. But since he didn't, I went up to the teacher, told her that I gave my gym suit to a poor, starving orphan who needed it to trade for a bowl of rice, and sat down to watch another volleyball game. Afterwards, in the locker room, everybody came over to ask me what had happened. Nancy really knows how to spread news quickly. I just said that Mr. Stone was mad at Miss Finney and didn't want students to interfere. It was strange. In Miss Finney's class, we had read To Kill a Mockingbird and talked about the part where Atticus tells Jem that you can't understand someone until you've walked around in his or her shoes. So now I tried, in my head, to put myself in Miss Finney's place, and in Mr. Stone's, and in my father's and mother's. It was horribly confusing. It sure gets tough when you get older. It's much easier to be a little kid whose big problems is learning to tie shoelaces. Next period, while I was trying to think, Nancy passed me a note, trying not to let the teacher see it. "Marcy, some of the kids are coming over to my house after school to make plans about how to help Miss Finney." Let me read that note again. I'm sorry, it was in cursive. "Marcy, some of the kids are coming over to my house after school to make plans about how to help Miss Finney. Can you come over? Joel will be there. Nancy." That's just like Nancy to change the spelling of her name and to dot the I with a big dumb circle. I guess it's a stage people go through, but I'm never going to do it. The dot looks too much like a blimp. When I looked up, I smiled at Nancy, who was pretending to solve an algebra equation. Finally, the bell rang, announcements were made, and I headed for my locker. Joel was standing there. "How did it go with Mr. Stone?" I just shook my head. "He called me in, too." "Did he tell you about his daughter?" "No. He said that I was a troublemaker and that I was a bad influence on you." That was amazing. Why did everybody keep trying to team Joel and me up? I mean, we just started talking to each other. I just stood there and blushed. I blushed a lot. That's really embarrassing. So rather than just standing there, I opened my locker. When I did, some of the books fell out. My locker cleanliness would never get good housekeeping's seal of approval. Joel just laughed and helped me pick up the books. Then he said, "We'd better hurry up. Nancy's expecting us, and I want to get there and make sure that things are done." We walked over to Nancy's house and talked. It was getting easier to talk to him, but I still felt like a blimp. I mean, I was fat. That hadn't changed. Although I had stopped eating a lot of junk, I still hadn't lost much weight. When we got to Nancy's house, I offered to help her get the food ready. Joel went downstairs, and Nancy and I worked in the kitchen. "Marcy, how come you never take gym?" "I don't like volleyball." "But you never play when we do anything else." "I'm not coordinated." "A lot of kids aren't." "Nancy, I don't want to talk about it." "But Marcy, you should. Miss Finney always said it's better to talk about things that bother you instead of keeping them inside." I thought about that. Maybe I should tell her, but I was afraid that she would laugh or tell someone else. "Promise not to tell?" "Yeah. I hate getting into a jumpsuit. I'm too fat and ugly, and I hate dressing and undressing and showering in front of everybody." Then I started to cry. "Marcy, come on. You're not ugly, and you are too fat, but you have good points too. It's just that kids think you're stuck up because you won't play and because you're smart." "Do they care?" "Sure. You can be fun to be with, and you say good things when you're not too scared." "Nancy, are you friends with me just because your mother makes you do that?" Nancy thought about that and said, "It sort of started out that way, but then I really got to like you." I didn't know what to say about that, so I said, "I guess we should bring the food downstairs now." We brought the stuff downstairs. There were a lot of kids there. I sat down next to Joel because he asked me to. "Marcy, what took you so long?" "Do you think I'm stuck up?" "No. Who told you that? Nancy?" "Yeah, she said some other kids thought I was." People always say that about other people who are quiet, because they are harder to know and more mysterious. But look at you lately. You've been talking a lot. "That's because you're a bad influence on me. That's what Mr. Stone says, so it must be true." We both laughed at that. I was proud of myself for that line. For a minute, I almost forgot that I was a blimp. Nancy passed her own cookies, but I refused to have any. She smiled at me when I did that, but didn't make a big deal about it. Then she said that we should all get down to business. Everyone started making suggestions. The meeting got pretty wild, so rather than trying to explain it, here are the secretary's notes for the meeting. Problem: what to do to show everyone how we feel about Ms. Finney and her being fired. Problem solutions: 1. Clog up the teachers' toilets with the New York Times school supplements. 2. Sit in at the Board of Education offices, the front office, and the cafeteria. 3. Demand aspirin from the school nurse. 4. Steal all the chalk in the entire school. 5. Put out an underground newspaper. 6. Put out a contract or a hit on Mr. Stone. 7. Short sheet the beds in the nurses' clinic. 8. Go to the guidance counselors and ask for guidance. 9. Boycott the school cafeteria. 10. Capture the intercom system and announce that school has been dismissed. 11. Picket. 12. Steal the teacher's lounge coffee pot. 13. Put a paddock or a lock on the faculty smoking room. 14. Circulate petitions showing support of Ms. Finney. 15. Have every kid in the school light up a cigarette at an assigned time so that the entire student body would get suspended at once. 16. Burn all the copies of the intelligence test or make Mr. Stone take one and announce the results at the next Parent-Teacher Association meeting. 17. Plant grass on Mr. Stone, marijuana. Call the cops and have him busted. 18. Deflate all the volleyballs. 19. Call all the major TV networks and have them cover the story. 20. Try to get our parents to support Ms. Finney. 21. Turn in all of our assignments written in crayon. 22. Refuse to leave homeroom until we get a promise that Mr. Stone will listen to us. 23. Cut school and then forge notes saying that we were absent because of cases of acute pimples. Needless to say, we decided not to do most of those things. What we planned to do was get petitions signed, try to get our parents to help, and refuse to leave homeroom until we could talk to Mr. Stone. We thought that if we could organize and get at least 10 kids from each homeroom to refuse to leave, would mess everything up, and then Mr. Stone would have to listen to our representatives. We voted and elected 4 of us, Joel, Nancy, Robert Alexander, and me. They said that we were the logical choices because Joel and I had nerve enough to talk up in class, and Nancy did some nutty things but had sense, and Robert knew how to speak Mr. Stone's language. Another first for Marcy, the kid who was afraid for being chosen last for gym teams. Mrs. Sheridan came down to the rec room and told us that it was time to be heading home for dinner. I said goodbye to Nancy, and she said she'd call me later. Joel walked me home. We talked about what would happen when our families found out we were leading what was happening. I said that my father would probably yell and threaten to cut off my allowance and tell me how stupid I was, and then my mother would try to calm him down. After that, I wasn't sure what would happen. Joel said he thought his father would approve, but even if he didn't, he would still allow Joel to go ahead with it. I asked what his mother would say, and he said, "That's a long story. We'll talk about it at Nancy's party, if you can go." I said, "Okay, I'll ask my parents tonight." Then we were at my door, and I said goodbye and went inside.